I'm Sonya Morton-Firth, and you're tuned in to the Sonya Morton-Firth Show. Today, my guest is Eric Balance, conscious entrepreneur, visionary, speaker, and leadership coach. We discuss understanding the reason for your life.
Purpose really comes from knowing who you are, your I am, you know? I am truth, I am faith, I am courage, I am peace.
How to become a conscious creator.
The second stage is a conscious creator that starts to see some sort of vision within themselves, has a feeling, starts to really connect to something greater.
The stages of mastery.
Needs cognitive mastery. So there's 3 stages of mastery. The first stage is cognitive mastery. The second stage is emotional mastery. And the third stage is physical mastery. Be it, do it, achieve it.
Eric Balance, welcome to my show. Firstly, thank you so much for being a guest. I feel truly honored. And Eric, tell my audience where you're dialing in from. This is amazing.
Well, I have to say, first of all, thank you for having me. And I'm very grateful to be here. And I'm coming from Australia. I'm on the Gold Coast, so it's a little dark outside already. So I'm gonna be like playing with the lights a little bit, but having a really good time. You know, it's a beautiful day. I leave to India tomorrow morning.
Wow.
So I'm really excited and just a lot of good things on the go.
Well, I want to know why you're going to India, but maybe before we get there, it would
Yeah.
be great for my audience, just for you to give me a little bit of your backstory and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So do you want me to, yeah, I'll just share.
Start from the
So
beginning, but I guess what's
yes,
sort of relevant to what made you the person that you are sitting here today.
yeah, this is a great question. So as a young boy, I was always curious, and this curiosity was something that made me look out onto the world and it just didn't make sense. It just didn't make sense to me at all. And I remember observing my parents and watching the way that they, would behave without external circumstance, whether it was money or challenges from the world. It was primarily money though. That they had a lot of stress and anxiety and trauma, and uh, I didn't understand because they're so loving and so abundant in their love and the way that they like could nurture and take care of us. And I could see how their state would change like so significantly, going from like this abundant, loving feeling to this scarcity, stressed out, anxious. And I didn't understand it. And it hurt because, when they would argue or things like this, it would then reflect into kind of the relationships that we had. Not intentionally, it's just obviously, stress happens, and when you're unconscious, you don't understand, and naturally that's kind of projected out to the world, right? To your children. And so this was something for me that was just like a huge trigger. And I remember telling myself as a young boy, saying, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I'm not gonna fucking allow this shit to bother me. And it just was something that I knew was a responsibility of mine, even as a young boy, which is fascinating because you're like 6 years old and you're taking responsibility already. You're saying that like you're going to change that within yourself. What can you do? And so to me this is fascinating because that means that I already at such a young age had such a like a wiring in me that was extremely aware.
Well,
And this awareness,
they
go
say
ahead.
the first 7 years are the most formative, and that's when, yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that, for a very long time. So to me, this is fascinating to still have had that awareness at 6 years old, and that, like, to go back and reflect on that and say, wow, like I actually knew at that time. Of course, I had to heal a lot of trauma leading up to, where I am today. Nonetheless, the point is that this was something that I actively or consciously was willing to take responsibility for. And so for the next few years or decades, let's say, I made it my absolute responsibility to figure out, how to beat the system. And I really like to play. I really like to have a good time. I like to, like, do things that are loving, and I really, I would always remember, like, my grandma and my mom and my sisters, they're always my guiding compass, right? So this is like the feminine nature. And I remember just like, and my dad, just a super loving man. So for me, the consistency was always about, wow, okay, I can be guided by love. I can be guided by this passionate connection. And that was my that was my compass. The feminine nature within myself, and that visibly was showing up around me with love and nurture, was what was my compass. And I would always make decisions based off of, would this be something that my grandmother or my mom
Mm,
would they be proud of,
mm,
or would they, maybe not even necessarily proud of, but would they say, you know what, like, this is who you are, or this is part of, like, following your heart. And I've also made decisions that didn't necessarily, they didn't agree with, but that was already, once I, like, discerned and understood my own passion. And so growing up, it was really about following my own conviction. And so there was a lot of animosity as I grew up within my sisters and my parents, because I was breaking patterns very, very young. So I was breaking the psychology of the way that my parents thought or my sisters thought, or although I was like, if that feels good in me, right? And even though it's loving, I'm going to make the decision and move forward. So until I got to high school, where I actually, um, I was a good student, and again, focusing on money again. Once you reach 16, you start focusing on, oh, look at all those people driving nice cars or having nice clothes or doing these things. So I started selling drugs,
okay.
and I was a very young entrepreneur. Um,
What
however,
what sort of drugs were you selling? Just out of interest.
crack cocaine,
Okay.
yeah, and it was really something that put me into the hole really fast. And what I mean by that is that yes, I was happy with all the materialistic things, but I was empty. And so once I became bored, I started using drugs, and I became a crack addict.
And when you were using those drugs, what sort of hole was that filling, or was that filling a hole for you?
Escape.
Mhm.
I was escaping reality because I didn't understand what my purpose was,
Okay.
why I existed, what was the reason for my life.
Okay. So we're at you at the stage where you're selling drugs, you're taking drugs. Uh, take me to the point where there must have been sort of a breaking point.
Yeah, so the breaking point was this, and it was like I was gone for, like, sometimes 3 years at a time, or sorry, 3 months at a time. And it was from 16 to 19 where I actually was using, and my parents didn't know for a long time where I was. And again, it was something that really had naturally scared them, of course. And I remember trying to go to rehab, or trying to go to detox, and then not being able to get into rehab because I couldn't stay clean long enough between the gap from detox to rehab. And so what ended up happening was my father, he asked me a question. And the question was, if you can't do this for me and you can't do this for yourself, can you do this for your future self? And it was in that moment, there was like, it was like, honestly, it changed my perspective on everything, Sonya, because it's like my
Wow.
spirit came out and looked at me and gave me a picture of what my life could be.
That is
It-
quite something. That those words that your father said, do it for your future self.
yeah.
Um, I guess there's a lot of things that he could have said in that moment as a father saying to his son that he's seeing, abusing drugs and doing himself harm. But that's quite something to say, do it for your future self.
And the profoundness of that question, with the awareness that my father has, this is something that I never recognized. Like I never understood the value of of how my parents see the world. I never paid attention to the value and the perspective of their level of consciousness and their map of the world. And it didn't make sense to me because society kept putting into me and into many of us their story, the story of how they think it should be. So I didn't understand the wisdom that was being passed on to me
Mm,
by the way my parents were being. And you see, this is something that happens constantly in today's
yeah.
society.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate. And I also think that, you know, which is why I think we have a bigger responsibility. But going back to that moment, it gave me a new like it's almost like that question gave me a hope. It gave me hope to say, wow, like something can be different. And of course, I couldn't get into rehab. However, because you have to be clean to go to rehab. However, the way that we did it was actually my father ended up peeing in a cup for me to go into rehab.
That's quite something as well.
And so this is something that like really because you have to do the way that it is in Canada. So this is something that like my father would do anything. He's to this day, he would do anything for something. And most fathers would. The thing is that I put my parents through a spiritual pain. I put them through uh, a pain that made them create so much faith in themselves and something greater than themselves that it created total faith in me. It created a faith that I started to cultivate after we ended up and I ended up getting leaving rehab. So I spent 7 weeks there, and then I ended up going with them to Europe, um, and it changed my life. And so I came back, and I really decided I was going to change the way that I showed up and went to university. You know, did the whole 9 to 5 thing, did the whole white picket fence, got married, um, and then got divorced because I still was unfulfilled.
Okay.
It's funny how you can go over those details so fast because they're so they're so blueprint of society.
And did you have at that time, it sounds like, as you said, you had the 9 to 5, married, sort of typical, normal life, as you'd call it. I don't like the word normal myself. Never you. I don't like to be described as it, but I say the majority of people would maybe live like that or aspire to live like that. What was your? Was there a moment or a moment where you sort of woke up and thought, "This life isn't for me," or "I'm not fulfilled. I need more."
I remember, so I was doing a lot of things. I went to school for accounting, and I did finance, and I worked at a firm, and then I hated that, and then I went to the oil field, worked as a welder, made a lot of money, and then became a superintendent, and then although I was making all this money, I was always gone, so I wasn't really enjoying my life, and then I started selling BMWs, was an amazing salesman, and I did everything, and I was so like lost. I was like, this is fucking bullshit. Like this is the point of life? Really? This is why I'm here? Like this is fucking retarded.
Well, this is what
And
society teaches us, right? This is what
that's
we're
right.
all told.
Yeah, and to me it just made my feeling of life saying like this is just unfulfilling, unsatisfactory. And I remember my wife at the time was happy. Like she was super satisfied with the life that we had. And I was like, don't you want more? You know? Like don't you want to live with magic? Don't you want like feel like everything and connect to it all? And I remember having that conversation and like, no, I want to have kids. And I was like, I can't have kids right now. I haven't even healed the child in me yet.
Mm, mm.
Um and it really, for me, it was like, okay, well, we're at a crossroads now. I'm gonna try to do something different, and you don't really believe in what I'm wanting to do. And it was that time. It was like a lot of online coaching and fitness coaching and stuff like that. So I was like pretty, you know, uh, yeah, like a lot of people were asking me for like details and
So,
things
so
like
you
this. So
as I understand it, you were a personal trainer into health and fitness,
yeah, I was
bodybuilder.
super into, yeah, 100%. So it gave me like, people were just asking me all the time, like, "Hey, what do you do with this? And what do you do with this?" I was like, "Well, fuck it. I'm just gonna do my best and figure out how to do that." And so I said, "I'll start training people." Not in the gym because I hated that. I don't like being around in the gym and like go go go. It was just like details, like here's a workout plan. Here's some, let's, if your mindset's not working, let's talk about it. Like having conversations. That's always been who I am. I'm just a great communicator. And she didn't think I could do it. So I said, well, okay, that's great. I understand. And I don't think I can have kids. So this is where we can, really, it was hard. Don't get me wrong. It was hard. And even that was the one time that I thought that I was going to go back to using.
Mm.
Uh, and I didn't. And thanks to my cat at the time. But nonetheless, the point was,
Your cat.
um, yeah, she like sat on my chest.
Oh,
Her name was Pickle. She sat on my chest because I wanted to, like, I was so heartbroken and I wanted to go use. I remember she sat on my chest and kept eating my stomach. And I realized in that moment how protected I have been forever by spirit, by our creator, our great teacher, and how I'm always being guided. I'm always actually tapped into the magic, and I've always have been because that's what I've been yearning for. Uh,
and was it at this stage that you'd started sort of your personal growth story? I mean, we've talked about earlier before we got onto this your work with Tony Robbins. Had you started this journey
yeah,
at this point? Had you scratched
yeah,
that itch?
yeah. So it was actually fascinating because I did a couple of like smaller events with him. Like went to his events, and I remember asking, my wife at the time. to come, and she couldn't make it, which is fine. There's no problem with that. And then the second time I remember, like they were just like Power of Life, small 4-hour events. But I remember the second time I was now not with her, and I was doing this online training, and I remember going, and it was actually uh, I was in Costa Rica, and I remember saying like a New Year's resolution and like being grateful. And then Tony posted something very similar to what I posted about the new year, new you, like how you can really. And I remember commenting on his post. I know you're going to be in Edmonton, which was my hometown. I'm really looking forward, and I just feel like I'm going to meet you. And he direct messaged me, and I didn't think it was Tony
Wow.
at the time, but it was fascinating to me because he's like, "Come say hi. I'd love to shake your head." He said, "Shake your head," and I started laughing.
He's very
Like, okay,
tall, so I get
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, and I started laughing. I was like, "This isn't even you, Tony." No, he's like, "Listen, it is me," and I've taken, I have that screenshot now, and I look back at it, and it's so fascinating. But the point was of it that I tried to go up. His security guards told me to move back like 3 or 4 times, but I kept trying until he finally came up and gave me a hug. And when that happened, some sort of energy translated
Mm,
into me.
mm.
Uh, and this energy was really powerful, and it gave me certainty. And I signed up at UPW to go to UPW in London. And when I
Mm.
saw him in London
What year was
on the
that?
first
Just out of
2019,
Oh, okay, okay.
2019,
I
yeah,
did UPW in London, but a few years before that.
yeah,
It would just be funny if it was the same year.
yeah, yeah. So it was UPW 2019, and Tony, Tony. So on the first day, I was, on Instagram sharing about, and I went up to Tony, just said, "Hey, Tony, remember me?" Like on a break, and he's like, "Edmonton," and he like, and the following day, I was moved by his nephew, and Jonathan Cardoza, who's the main room event coordinator. They moved me to the front to sit in Tony's like section. And I was like, I was so, I was like, this is fucking awesome, like so grateful. I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't really know at the time that it was Tony until later when I became a plat. They told me that it was him that had moved me there. But the fact is that after those 3 days, I felt spending time with Tony and pouring in that energy with each other, it gave me, and being around all these other people, it gave me the level of physiology and connection to my body to really truly, he held the space to allow me to be myself. I pushed myself to the absolute unlimited potential, and I could keep going. And I realized that my energy is just so nonstop, and we all have it. And it was in that event that I was just unleashing myself. Like I was really, when he says unleash the power, like I was all in. And I signed up to Plat at the end of that event, platinum as a platinum partner, and I was terrified because it was $85,000 US, and the down payment I just had enough for like the 25K down, and I didn't know how I was going to figure out the rest. And I remember Scotty Humphreys, his brother-in-law, he put his hand on my heart and he just looked at me and he said, "What does this feel?" And I felt into my heart, and I was just like, if I can't invest into myself $85,000, how am I willing to ever focus on what I can create? Like, if I can't believe in myself, if I can't make the dedicated decision, then I genuinely don't have any purpose. And so I made it happen, and I went to Date with Destiny in Cairns in Australia in 2019, and I really poured my heart into my mission and my mission statement. I got to share it on stage, and it changed my life. It really changed my life. Although, and that question then was like, how can I embody loving and courageous wisdom and empower myself and others? And my mission is to really be loving and courageous wisdom and to empower others and myself. And I realized that for the past 5 years, because we just finished Date with Destiny, and we were just changed our primary question in our that I literally programmed into myself in 2019 to embody loving and courageous wisdom. And that's what I did. So from 2019 to 2024 or 2023, 2024,
Just
I
about.
basically been traveling around the world learning about different ancient wisdom, indigenous uh, like teachings, learning from Tony, spending time with masters of the arts in so many different modalities that allow me to tap into a new level of consciousness. And so
Wow.
I literally learned to I took that mission statement and that primary question and I like took it into my body. My primary question now is how can I appreciate and enjoy God's infinite intelligence coming through me in this moment?
Wow. That's quite deep. And Eric, there are so many questions I've got for you. Um, you talk about, and I think this is a big thing, and it's one of the things that I've been on a personal journey myself. I think once you enter this realm, you don't stop. And there's one thing I certainly sort of live my life by, and that's something funny enough Albert Einstein said, which is when you stop learning, we start dying. Um, but what are we all searching for? You said purpose.
Mm,
And that is such, to me, that's such a big thing, and something that I probably still haven't found. Have you found your purpose?
100%.
Tell me about your purpose.
100%. So the mission is really to focus on how to be gracious and kind, to enjoy peace and abundance, and to do even more for myself and others. And this comes from a state of grace, a state of certainty, a state of knowing where we don't have to force anything anymore. For the last 5 years, I was forcing a lot
Mm.
because I didn't know why I existed. And purpose really comes from knowing your who you are, your I am, you know. I am truth, I am faith, I am courage, I am peace. And these components, these statements, the I am statement is who we decide to embody. Because for such a long period of time, if we didn't own these new identities and step into them, we could never define our purpose. So the purpose for me is to redefine culture. It's to redefine the art of business and to really unify what it means to create conscious entrepreneurs and conscious leaders and amplify them in terms of how we're creating and cultivating impact so that we can focus on influence, on extreme measurables, on our purpose for the planet, for people, for how we're really supposed to be profitable, for for facing adversity, for creating a life and a responsible world, culture, and community that is here that will leave it better behind so that we can really transform ourselves and others.
That's absolutely beautiful. Having been in the business world, corporate world for many years, most of my career was in the corporate world, in the finance industry. And I've got to
Mm,
say, and it was a few years ago now, but I've got to say there wasn't much conscious about that world. And it's
nothing.
probably it's probably the reason I left. Well, it is the reason I left because I felt totally unfulfilled. You mentioned the words conscious entrepreneur, and I know you talk about yourself as a conscious entrepreneur. What is that? What is a conscious entrepreneur?
So, you know, there's this very beautiful book by Frederick Laroux called Reinventing Organizations. And there's our evolutionary theory of psychology and the way that we are able to cultivate a meaningful perspective is been based off of of years. So we are in essence, we are able to self-manage ourselves because that's how the organism of our planet, which we're a part of, we're not separate from it, has been cultivating for billions of years. And so the illusion that we create oftentimes as entrepreneurs that are of the unconscious part is based off of a very orange or blue or even a red level of consciousness, which is like a
Oh,
power god, authoritarian, or striver, driver, achiever. And so the conscious entrepreneur is really focused on more of the green, the socially conscious, the flex and flow, the integrated, the one that can dance between the levels of consciousness, and the awakened soul, which is the turquoise that is able to really take things and appreciate every moment and see the gifts in the way that the universe is guiding. And so this is something that, um, Patagonia, for example, is a very conscious organization that focuses on unifying their business acumen back into how they're developing community, culture, and development for um, for humanity. And so this is what a conscious entrepreneur does, is it creates enough of a momentum where going from an absolute unseen perspective, it's not an unconscious creator because there's 5 steps. So the first step is being unseen, where we actually integrate our philosophy of trauma passed down from whatever society or ancestral belief that we've been passed down through our parents. And so this unconscious creator feels really unseen, doesn't know his place in the world, very egotistical. It's about me. The second stage is a conscious creator that starts to see some sort of vision within themselves, has a feeling, starts to really connect to something greater.
and just because I want to really unpick that, because I think there are so many people, and that maybe stay in just the first stage
Yeah,
and don't actually even go to the next stage. How, and I mean, maybe you were going to come on to this, but how do you become
oh,
more conscious? Is there other tools you can use? I know some people, and myself included, I've tried psychedelics, meditation. Is there any sort of tools that help you
I think the biggest
become more
I think
conscious?
the biggest breakthrough for an unconscious person or a person that literally lives in a box is about immersing themselves into a good book and nature. Uh, because nature will teach you the most.
Mm.
Yes, you can do the breath work and the meditation and all these things. The focal point or the breakthrough that happens to go from unseen to really stepping into that you have a view or a vision for the people of the logic mind. It's actually about finding a role model, somebody that you resonate with, listening to podcasts, paying attention to content, and reading because you're so stuck in your mind that you actually don't believe that prison needs cognitive mastery. So there's 3 stages of mastery. The first stage is cognitive mastery. The second stage is emotional mastery, and the third stage is physical mastery. Be it, do it, achieve it. And so the unconscious creator to step into a level of curiosity is the number one thing. That is the breakthrough for them to step into a conscious creator, meaning doing something where they believe they could start seeing a vision that maybe, it's just like in that moment where I saw with my ex-wife and I said, okay, I think I can do it. I see it, even though I don't know how. That is already stepping into a consciousness. That is already becoming conscious because you're starting to believe in yourself. And once you start seeing that vision, you then step into, okay, well, okay, so now you're going to start executing. You're going to start implementing. You're going to start taking this driver. You're going to work with somebody. You're going to work with somebody that can help you. You're going to have somebody that can support you. You're going to have a coach, whatever, a team, or some sort of helpful organization or entity, and that now allows you to be functional in your role. So you become now a conscious leader where you lead yourself, because the first thing that you need to influence others is you need to influence yourself. Once you're able to cultivate this influence and you're really embodying that level of standard and you're holding yourself to a higher standard, you're tapped into your emotions. You're really starting to pay more attention. Now you're definitely spending more time doing breath work, meditation. You're tuned way more into what it means to actually develop a higher state of frequency, which is the fourth stage. Now you step into a conscious entrepreneur. This is a person that is an influential individual, not just to their business, but to the people around. So everywhere they go, they are already of influence. They don't have thousands or millions of followers. They influence the environment of uncertainty. So they walk into any environment and they can influence it because they have enough certainty within themselves to know how to really move forward with grace, with kindness, with strength, with the ability to navigate different circumstances and knowing that they can influence the circumstances. So they no longer allow the outside world to affect them, but they are actually influencing the world through themselves. So the in fluid through the outside. So influence.
I love it.
And then the fifth, go
Sorry,
ahead.
go on. Fifth stage.
And the final and the fifth stage is a conscious integrator. And this is an unstoppable force of good, force of God, force of something greater than yourself. This is where you literally become the embodiment of consciousness manifesting itself. And you pay attention to all of the forms, all of the creative, all of the potential, and you work in unison and knowing that you're in direct connection with the intelligence or infinite intelligence coming through you. And so you work in cohesion, you work with the magic. You work with the magic, and the magic becomes who you are.
Wow, Eric, that's amazing. I almost want to know where I am. If there were people that are sort of listening to this and thinking, well, where am I on the consciousness levels? I've got this itch. I've, I know there's more to life than this materialistic world that we live in, than what we're being told day in and day out. Like we spoke about at the beginning, what is the normal life? A 9 to 5, get married, white picket fence, if you want to go down that whole sort of scenario. But if you've got that itch, and you think there's much more to life, and you've just gone through the various steps, there might be people thinking, gosh, I don't even know where to start. And you've said, yes, a good book, get into nature. Is there anything else? Follow the right people, absolutely. Surround yourself with the right people. But I think the work can sometimes be a lot harder than that. What I found is, because we're like you correctly said, we become a prisoner. We are prisoners of our minds, and our mind keeps on coming back to us and telling us, well, don't be stupid, you can't live like this, you still need to make money, and look at this person, this is successful, this is what we deem successful. So we're constantly being bombarded by these messages, which I find sometimes very difficult when you're trying to get more and more conscious to stop the mind. Is there any sort of tips that you can?
So I think the first thing is to why is there a very, and this is very common in the spiritual community, because I do believe that the spiritual community or the conscious community, which I think they're both different, by the way, it's not the same thing, um,
Oh, interesting. We have to
have
go
some
back to that.
yeah, very different. And to me is very different. Um, but before we go back to that, there's the spiritual community has trauma, I believe, with money. The conscious community is also, there's like, oh my goodness, like why can't I charge for what I'm worth? Why? Why not? Why is there an association, a negative association communicated based off of the value that you deliver to the world and receive that back. If you're conscious and you're aware of the energy, you know that money is just a form of energy, and it's an energy that is, by the way, created by humans, right? Not by God. It's created by humans. So if you're conscious, if you're actually conscious, then you're totally okay with receiving money.
Mm, mm. How do you break the barriers? If you find yourself in a position where maybe you're doing what you love, but you're not receiving, there's a barrier there.
So what's the barrier? The barrier oftentimes can it be that you don't value yourself, you don't know if you're worthy of what you're doing, you don't own it because you're in the mind constantly. So you're trying to prove it versus own it. So this is the stage, this is where the part is where it's like, okay, I'm so spiritual and I can't value or I can't pay or I can't, I just want to donate or receive because I can't have a conversation of being actually, this is my value, this is what I deserve, and this is how much you owe me. And in exchange, I'm going to create a very beautiful structure for you to actually follow so that you can develop and I can help you serve at the capacity that you're meant to.
Yeah. Um, it's
Does that
so,
make sense?
yeah, absolutely. It really does. And you know, the very fact I think that we're talking about consciousness, about these things, I think shows that, you know, our parents, I'm not sure your age, but you know, the generations before us, would they have had these conversations? Are we becoming more enlightened as humanity becoming more enlightened?
So I believe so, 100%. And I also believe that we're tapping into an era that allows us to actually create whatever we want and build our own worlds and have our own communities and have our own um, currencies and develop whatever we feel like doing, and nobody can stop us.
Okay, just to put a little bit of not maybe a spanner in the works, but obviously you've just discussed or you just talked about the new world, the future. Um, and yet we've got AI coming up on the horizon quicker than you can say Jack Frost. It's going to be here. Well, it is here. Uh, uh, do you see any threat with AI and humanity and where it's going?
No, I don't. I actually believe that, AI is a benefit. It's based off of how we see ourselves. And if we choose to move forward with true intention and love and commitment, then AI is going to be a benefit. And I think that, people are so concerned about those that are not going to use it for good or things like this. There's always going to be the there's always going to be people out there that try to manipulate any type of system. The thing is that we just have to be smarter and, you know, losing jobs or things like this. I think that AI gives us an opportunity to actually become creators. It helps more people become creators in benefit to what they want to create, their dreams, their lives, their experiences, and really captivate the audience that they're destined to serve.
What's your vision of the future, Eric?
Well, for me, it's important. I mentioned that, Balance Media Ventures is focusing on redefining culture and really amplifying community development. I'm going to India to really spend time at a village where we're working on a community development there with an amazing foundation and some
Wow.
profound leaders. And I leave tomorrow, and then also connecting that to some of the partners that are doing that in Brazil or in Africa. And, this is something that my vision is about amplifying and creating this world and building not just property developments and community developments, taking that time to build these communities around the world so that people can live in peak existence, so that children can educate themselves about what it means to be a conscious entrepreneur and how they can actually learn from the get-go that they can go out there and build from goodness, from their dreams, and that we can hone in on serving our children. Because if we start serving our children rather than serving ourselves, then we will start to benefit the next generation. And like this is something that the indigenous and the ancient teachings have always taught is that we're actually not here for ourselves. We're here for the next generation. And it's a forgotten attribute in much of the Western world. It's like me, I. And unfortunately, that's already, as we're seeing, it's just falling apart because people want to work together. And by us doing this as a team, as a family, as a community around the globe, there's nothing, it's like Socrates said, it's not about fighting the old, it's about just building the new. And I can tell you this much that there's no fight here. They can't fight with anything that's just strong because it's coming from the heart.
Mm.
So it gives us the capacity to manifest even more because we're doing it at a space where we want to help versus fight. It's about following our faith versus our fear. And so my vision is really to redefine culture around the planet because I've spent so much time around different tribes, cultures, religions, belief systems, and redefining culture in terms of navigating and helping people see that they are their own guru, that they are their own, you know, savior, that they have their own energy to create because they are their own state of consciousness and they have a direct connection.
Mm.
Nobody else needs to guide them except themselves. And if they have that level of responsibility, and if they recognize that they can take 100% responsibility, then instead of finding all the problems, they're going to focus only on solutions. And if we do that as an international community, we start building, we start creating, we become one team. And that is what we are. It's just about if you are choosing to step into that identity. I've chosen to step into the identity of leading the way and making it happen. And I stand on the shoulders of a lot of our great teachers, including Tony Robbins, that have given me the capacity and the awareness to learn how to embody these teachings so that I can take in the cognitive awareness, the emotional mastery, and step into the physical mastery so that we create heaven on earth.
And Eric, if anybody else wants to join your community and loves what you're saying and it really resonates with them, I mean, it certainly resonated with me. I've had little goosebumps while you've been talking. How do they join your community? How do they find out more about you?
So there's a number of websites, but like you can always catch me on Instagram, Eric Balance, ERIC Balance, and our organization balancemedia.ventures online, where we really teach about how to create these conscious impactful teams, organizations, and then our community, conscious entrepreneurship. So you can find Business Nirvana. I teach a lot about like what I call business nirvana, how to create momentum, reach, and retention in business. So I really see business as a spiritual game. Um, and yeah, conscious entrepreneurship dot online. If you go there, you'll also you can jump into our masterclass that literally teaches you about the impact model of how to build influence, understand your measurables, focus on your purpose, face adversity, start creating, and then transforming your business.
We'll put the link definitely in the show notes. Eric, final takeaways. If you reflect back on our conversation, and I feel like I could talk to you forever. But are there any sort of key takeaways on what we've spoken about that people listening should really think about to become more conscious entrepreneurs or more conscious human beings?
Yeah, I think, before you even go into entrepreneurship, it's like start recognizing that you're a creator, that you get to create your life. You don't have to manage your circumstances. And if you decide and commit, you can make a choice to move forward with absolute certainty. But the certainty, it only comes from you. People are seeking certainty outside of themselves. So I'll leave with this one saying. There's this ancient philosophy that says, if you really realized that the most beautiful thing that you have is that you're actually here alone.
Eric Balance, thank you very much.